Hello, everybody, fellow star seeds out there. Welcome to another episode of the Mystery School of Life. It's your guide for all things conscious living. Today, we're going to talk about plant medicine versus big pharma and those type of medicines and doctors. So, we've got Jennifer here that is an herbalist and she knows her stuff when it comes to plant medicine. So I'm going to let her start us off on plant medicine and get her insights on that.
All right. Yeah, I am a community herbalist, and I'm just an avid lover of nature in general. So, just I'm gonna just dive right in. There's so much we could talk about, and we're gonna, keep it to a digestible morsel today. Maybe give you a good heavy meal, but it'll be just one meal today, not the whole month. So we're talking about herbal medicine, plant medicine, and herbal medicine has been known as the people's medicine. And for time immemorial, people have used plants to not only for nourishment but also to heal. It is the one of the original medicines. So we're talking about a system and a body of work that is ancient evidence-based system of health. You have traditional Chinese medicine and the Ayurvedic systems that are over 6,000 years old as a cohesive, established bodies of work. So we're talking about knowledge of the human body, how it works, and of these plants and how they interact with us that are thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. These plants have also been used fairly consistently across the ages. So when you look at ancient texts, the way that the Romans used chamomile is indeed what chamomile is good for and used for. So now we have, a lot of scientific research delving into plant constituents and their actions on the body that are also revealing, oh, and they could also possibly be good for all these other ailments or issues in the body. But as a whole, plants have been used very consistently over the 6,000 years that we have. I think it's maybe the earliest text is about 10,000 years old, documenting specifically how plants were used. Now we know
Yeah.
we've been using them since the beginning. However, as far as documentation goes, which is kind of consistent with all of our recorded history anyway. Um, so we know there's definitely been around a lot longer in their use. Just a real brief overview too of just the history. Um, the United States, our I don't want to call it healthcare, but our healthcare system, sick care system, relies heavily on drug-based pharmaceuticals, whereas around the world, most other countries all around the world primarily use plant medicines. So this isn't, I know herbalism has been given such a bad rap in the United States, and that, again, there's an agenda behind that. You're going to talk a little bit about that today, I think. Um, let's see here. Ah, so
You
much I
should
could
see
go
her
off
house, you
of.
guys. If you go in her kitchen, it's like a plant herbalist apothecary galore. Like
My
it is
apothecary.
amazing. It's like
Yeah,
it's totally amazing. Yeah.
it's fantastic. So yeah, so we have these systems of medicine and very systematic, scientific, really. They're very evidence-based systems of medicine that are over, thousands of years old, 6,000 years old. In the Western world, now Western herbalism as a body of work started coming out. I'm going to throw out dates, and I know depending on the herbalist and depending on your background, I would say maybe about 700 years ago, talking like the end of the Middle Ages. In the Middle Ages, a lot of bodies of work, as we know, were lost and
Yeah.
suppressed. And so Western herbalism started coming out again um, as a whole, I would say in the Middle Ages. And then there was a shift as well with the scientific movement. So starting, back in the 16 and 1700s, where before that you had the wisdom keepers, you had the indigenous in European indigenous medicines, the wisdom keepers and the medicine women, and as we know during the burning times, the witch hunts,
I've been
those
burned as
people
a
and
witch in many past lives.
right.
Burned as a witch, yeah.
Yeah, and those bodies of work were lost. Then the scientific movement came out, starting in the Age of Enlightenment and Age of Reason, and there was became a big split where we had systems that were really holistic based and looked at the person
Hmm.
to going to more of the Newtonian parts based, um, looking at the symptom rather than the person, looking at the parts rather than the whole. And so we started to develop a very reductionist view of our bodies and health and even plant use. And so a lot of the texts of Western herbalism are based in that allopathic view. Now, Western herbalism is still more holistic than, our current Western allopathic medicine system. However, um, even Western herbalism tends to be more of a parts to whole rather than the whole of a person. And certainly modern mainstream, I would say like mainstream that you're finding in the grocery store kind of herbalism where there's a big push now to standardized herbs and or to look at a lot of the scientific research done tries to figure out, well, what is it in this plant that makes it effective.
Hmm.
They find what they think that chemical compound is, and then they say, aha, it's this is why St. John's wort works this way. However, plants do not work in a reductionist
No,
method at all. They work
yeah.
very synergistically with every single other um, element, vitamin, mineral, all the other constituents. They work synergistically and holistically together. So that's kind of like a brief rundown of where we are in herbalism.
Yeah,
I'm going
and
to hand it over
yeah.
to you.
And any native tribes around the world, no matter where they are, Africa, South America, or Native Americans here, they still use the plants to treat things.
Yeah,
So,
I think it. I didn't look it up, but I think the statistic is like 80% of the world plant medicine is their primary source of medicine. And I really differentiate between what we call medicine and what you get when you go to the doctor or the pharmacy. That is
yeah,
a drug. It's
yeah,
it's synthetic, it's chemically made, and um, your body really doesn't know what to do with it. It
yeah.
views it treats it, it responds to it as a chemical. Whereas the phyto constituents, the phytopharmaceuticals, there's different names for them that are found in plants. Your DNA knows exactly how to respond
Yeah.
to that. It's
It
natural.
connects on a spiritual level too. Like
Mhm.
your body recognizes this. This is from the earth. Our
Yes.
body is from the earth, so it responds to it a lot better than having these crazy reactions you get from a prescription type of
Mhm.
drug.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm going to delve into that later on in our talk today,
Okay.
just with, yeah, how the body responds to pharmaceutical drugs and how the body responds to plant medicines, which is really fascinating. So we'll get
Okay.
into that. We'll get
We'll
into
get
that
into
later.
that.
It's like we're gonna
Yeah.
start with the scientific, the history first, and then we'll bring it back down home
Yeah.
into the body. So
So,
start in the mind, bring it
yeah.
down into the body.
I'm the
Yeah.
history nerd of the
Yes.
group here, so here I go
Yeah.
on my history soapbox. So, I've worked in the medical industry, so I very much know how it works. Doctors are literally paid to push drugs.
Mhm.
That's really all they do anymore is sit there and write you a script. That's it. unless they're specialized in like a brain surgeon or something like that. But that's a whole different thing. But that's what they do. They're designed to just sit there and write you a prescription for something. So then you get into Big Pharma, and I have some listed here on my notes because there's been some that are like really bad offenders of things. So um, it started out with the Rockefeller family. I mean, they're more known for like big oil and things like that, but they invested in pharmaceutical companies. So they took it away from a holistic approach into a money approach. And that's where all the thing just started cascading out of control. And then you've got like the Bayer company, and Pfizer is a well-known one. And then you get into Purdue and what the Sacklers did, and that's why we have the opiate crisis that we have now. And the Sacklers really pushed actual sales teams out into the country to finesse doctors and like whatever they had to do to get that doctor to sell their opioids, and giving them more and higher doses and telling them it was safe. And our government was involved in it because they approved, the FDA approved this whole thing. So the Sacklers really started this big push of, we're going to get these giant sales teams and let's get these really, really pretty gals to go to these doctors' offices and incentives. And if we have to take them to strip clubs, that's what we're going to do. And it started like Viagra was done the same way. So that in itself is so wrong. Like, you're taking medicine and you're treating it like a used car salesman. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how many cars can I sell this month? And making
Can I just
people very rich off of it.
Could I pop in here for a moment too? You brought in Rockefeller, who Rockefeller took over our medical system in the early 1900s, like 1920s, 1930s, and like you said, brought it from prior to that in the United States. Um, Herbal medicine was taught in all medical colleges, and in fact, and homeopathy was taught in
Yeah.
all medical colleges. These were known as the eclectic colleges.
Hmm.
And after Rockefeller took over our medical system, these colleges were basically pushed out of business, out of existence. Doctors were forced to, or students were forced to, and doctors then too were forced to join these organizations and choose to say, well, if you want a license, you have to be licensed by these schools.
Yes.
If you go to one of the eclectic colleges, you cannot be licensed. So
Yeah.
Rockefeller also took over our education system as well.
Yeah.
All of our education system, public education, as well as the medical colleges.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about Western allopathic medicine, which that term, when I say that term, that means like when you go to your doctor and you get your drug prescription, or you get, your diagnosis and get told you need to have surgery, which are, the two things that doctors tell you. Um, this system of mm, it's not medicine, it's not real medicine, but this
Yeah.
system of working with our bodies when we don't feel well, when we're sick, is really, we're talking about a system that's less than 150 years old,
Yeah.
right? So um, it's being touted as the gold standard of science. But as
Yeah.
you're going to explain, like, this science has been bought and paid for by petroleum companies,
Yeah.
by chemical companies,
Yeah.
not by true doctors,
No.
not by true scientists, but by companies. And
Yeah.
all of those drug companies that you just listed off, the majority of them were in World War I and World War II, were German chemical
Yes, they were.
manufacturing companies.
Yes,
They
they
were
were.
not They were not healthcare companies.
No.
They were manufacturing wartime chemicals
Yeah.
and other, other chemicals, which have now become our medicine based companies, our fertilizers that are growing our food, right? So
Yep.
these have now become our food and medicine companies. Before, in World War I and World War II, these were uh, ammunitions companies
Yeah. Yeah.
and chemical companies. So
Yeah.
this is really important to know. I hate hounding on this. I'd really rather talk about the body and how it's designed to heal and how the earth has everything we
Yeah.
need. But sometimes it's really important to understand this background because there's so much backlash when it comes to what true health and true medicine is.
Yeah.
And when you start talking about these things, getting called a quack, there was a time in early on with Rockefeller where if you were an herbalist, it was illegal. You were a criminal. Prior to
Mhm.
that, if you were an herbalist, you were deemed a witch and you could be killed.
Yeah.
When Rockefeller took over, you were deemed a criminal.
Yeah.
Same thing with midwifery when he took over the medical
Yeah.
system that way as well. It was illegal. So these things were driven underground. So it's important to understand why you might even have the viewpoint that a person carries around health, understanding that didn't originate with you. It's not
Yeah.
science based. And
Yeah.
to really understand the history behind it, the
Yeah.
fraudulent, very
And
fraudulent
I
history behind that.
really want people to educate themselves because doctors are very quick to just jump to some kind of diagnosis and oh, let me get you this script. And like anybody that knows me personally knows that I lost my mom at this time of year last year, and I could like too many things happened in her life for me to be able to like change her mind about anything. But I was always trying to tell her because she was always saying, "Oh, I feel sick. I got to go to the doctor. Oh, they're just going to give me another pill." I'm like, "That's the only thing they're supposed to do is give you another pill." And she had a terrible time with any kind of medication, like those drug commercials where they list like all these crazy ass side effects. She was
Mhm.
like the 1% of the person that would get all this crazy stuff happen to her. And I just could not get her to understand that that's what doctors do anymore. It's like, okay, you told me a couple things about yourself. I'm gonna go with this guess and diagnose you with this. Okay, here's some medicine and be on your way. And that's all they do for people anymore. And
It's how they're
that's
trained. That's how,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's very, very sad. And going back to our government, and this is going to get into illegal drugs, but
Mm.
um, because I was talking about the Sacklers and the opioid epidemic in the U.S. and I'm from West Virginia. I saw how that affected people, and I know from watching their hearings on this, their depositions that they had to give, that they were very aware of the people that they were targeting with these medications. And then they were very aware of all of these clinics that were popping up all over the place where there was lines of people outside. Like you could see that they were completely addicted. They were itching all over the place and just to get in there and get their scripts. And these doctors that were in these so-called clinics were just like da 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 oxycontin, da 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 more oxycontin, da 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 da, like just this line of people. And the Sacklers were well aware of that. So
And who are the Sacklers?
they were part of the Purdue pharmacy system.
Okay.
And what they did is take, I got to make sure that I say this right. They took, was it was part of the cotton family of opioids, but what they did is put a like a coating around the outside of the actual pill, which made it time released. And that's how they got it pushed through the FDA. And then as people became more and more addicted, they would say, oh, you're having breakthrough pain, prescribe them an even higher dose. And they knew full well what was happening and the communities that were being affected by this. And so just knowing that, and they were targeting very poor communities, ethnic people, and then you get back to our actual federal government, and I'm talking about CIA dirty ops here. So during the 60s, when the Black Panther movement was happening, that they of course scared the living shit out of the establishment because they were like seen as like, yeah, there was like real fear in the establishment. But to take them down, they literally, our government flooded black neighborhoods with heroin. And that was the fall of the Black Panthers. And what's the sad thing about that is the Black Panthers actually took care of their communities, made sure that people were fed if they didn't have any food. If you needed some clothes, they put clothes on your back. They were actually looking out for their communities. And of course,
That
speaking
was
of,
in that Black Panthers movement. That was like in the 60s
yeah,
or
in the
70s.
60s, in the
In the 60s.
60s.
So we
Yeah.
went from 1920 in a period of 40 years. Um, from 1920, Rockefeller takes over the medical industry, takes over our prescription drug companies
Mhm.
to setting up. And there's a lot of that happened in just those short 40 years as well. How did we
Yeah.
get from there to there?
Yeah. Because our the establishment cannot have, especially black people, and I'm not speaking as a black person here, so please don't write in hateful messages about that. I'm just talking about the history, and I know what has happened to these poor people. So they cannot have them rising up ever. And so first it was the heroin with the Black Panthers. Get rid of those people because they're causing us problems and they're starting a revolution for their own people. And then in the 80s, during the Iran Contra affair, the CIA had dirty under operations going and flooded all the ghettos and poor neighborhoods in the country with crack. That's where crack came from. So then you had a crack epidemic. So I'm just going to say this, and everybody can hate on me or snarl at me or whatever you're going to say, but I really want people in the black neighborhoods, anybody from the brown people, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, wherever you come from, these people that live in like gang neighborhoods that make their living off of these drugs and then they get put in the prison system. Well, once you're in the prison system, once you get let out, you have a felony on your record now. Now nobody wants to hire you. And then they go right back to selling drugs. I really want them to organize themselves, kind of like the Black Panthers did. Take all that dang money you're making off of all of these drugs, pool it all together, build businesses in your neighborhood, and say F you to this freaking system and start taking care of yourselves. Like that's what I really want for these people. But
Bring
so
it back, power to the people, right?
yeah. So our government is all full of all kinds of dirty, nasty things that they have done. And then if we start to get into cancer, that is a $1 billion industry. They do not want any kind of really progressive, just gets rid of cancer of any kind because they make billions off of cancer. And it's in like our food is poison that they sell in the grocery store. There's things in our grocery stores that other countries wouldn't even allow in their country for people to eat because it is all chemicals and poison. And millennials have 75 different new kinds of cancers. It's because you were eating total shit your whole life. And so when I was looking up different statistics on cancer, the average cost if you get cancer in the United States is $12,000 a month of out of pocket expenses that you have to pay. And stem cells are not used quite yet. So I was looking up stem cell treatments for cancer because I wasn't really sure about that. They don't do it except for bone cancer, and that's only if any other kind of treatment does not work. So the only cancer treatments you're going to get in the United States is chemo and radiation. And they're putting even more poisons in your body and then basically nuking you at the same time and killing all your healthy cells along with the cancer cells and killing off other parts of your body, making your organs not work and all kinds of horrible things. So, since I've worked in hospitals, like you cannot even be a nurse that is pregnant and work on a cancer unit because it is that toxic. So, I was looking up the number one and two countries for cancer treatment. The first one is India, which surprised me. The next one was Japan. And both of them have, I mean, they do use chemo and radiation, but in different ways. But they also use a lot of herbal Chinese medicines with their cancer treatments. And they have photo immunotherapy, so that's laser targeted therapy. And they also use heavy ion therapy, so it's targeted ions that go into your body. And their cost for cancer for a year is $28,000. So compare that to the US where it's $12,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah,
I want to
cancer.
go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, I was going to say cancer is primarily the rise of cancer is primarily a money making apparatus,
Hmm.
apparatus. Like you mentioned, we do have a remarkable rise of cancer diagnoses in the United States, and it's twofold. You mentioned the sheer significant amount of chemicals
Yeah,
in our environments. We are exposed to literally hundreds of chemicals a
yeah.
day in our
In our
water,
air,
in
in our
our
water.
air,
Yeah.
your shampoo, your
Hmm.
soap, all your skincare products. If you're
Yeah.
using chemical based products,
Yeah. You froze, Jen.
and is literally
There we go.
slathering chemicals all over their body every
Yeah.
day. You're bathing in it. You're gargling your you're washing your face and your mouth, and
Ah,
you're swallowing it in your food, in your so-called medicine, in your
yeah.
clothing. I mean, you'll hear me say this so many times. Polyester and nylon and non-organic
Yeah.
cotton, you are wrapping yourself in these chemicals, and your skin is your biggest
Yeah.
organ, and your skin is absorbing them.
Yeah. They're
So
actually
not to
saying
be
some some materials that bras are made out of are
mhm.
actually causing breast cancer because of whatever the fabric is that the bra is made out of.
Well, bras do two things. The majority of bras, yeah, are polyester and nylon, which is just a chemical bath that you're, and breast tissue is very sensitive. But you also have an incredible amount of your lymph tissues, and your axillary lymph tissues around the breast area. And so not only are you holding these toxins close to your body, for 12 hours a day. Some women sleep in bras. I can't imagine. Like, I hate wearing them to begin with, but I would not sleep in one. But you're exposing these very sensitive tissues, very absorbent. Your armpits are very absorbent. You've got all your lymph glands in there, which are the cleanup crew in your body. And
Yep.
you're just like soaking them, and your deodorant too, right? Soaking them in these chemicals. But the other thing that bras do is bras restrict the movement of that lymph tissue. So rather than, your lymph being able to flow around your body, clean things up, and flow to clean out, it's just stuck there being held in those bras. So you have a lot of stagnation as well. So that's
Yeah.
another reason why bras are really detrimental, particularly for breast tissue. So as a woman, pick a organic cotton bra that is wireless, and only wear it when you absolutely have to. Do not wear it at night. You come home, take it off. Let the ladies free, because
Shake
you
him
want
around.
that's right. You want healthy breast
Yeah.
tissue, and to minimize your exposure to that. But the other thing with the cancer diagnoses, so one, we have the increase in chemicals. It is big money business. But the other reason is that there are so many health issues that even 20 years ago might have been diagnosed as, it's a benign tumor, or it's, oh, you have some abnormal tissue. And doctors might have shrugged their shoulders and say, okay, we're gonna, it's a little abnormality, but it's not really a big deal. We'll just keep an eye on it, be healthy, and it would clear up. But because of the system that we have, our insurance system and the pharmaceutical system, the medical system,
Yeah.
um, these abnormalities are now being diagnosed as cancer.
Yeah.
And what you have is, it's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. The minute you get that diagnosis, you go into fear for your life, and you're going to perpetuate the disease. I think the statistics with cancer truly is that the majority of cancers, and depending on the stage that it's in, but the majority of cancers, I think it's like 80% even. I'd have to look this up. PubMed.gov, man. You want everything that we're saying is backed up,
Yeah.
right? PubMed.gov. We're not just pulling
Yeah.
this stuff out of the air.
Yeah.
I think it's like 80% of cancers clear up
Yeah.
on their own,
Yeah.
without any intervention.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some severe cancers, but that do need medical treatment and assistance, and the body needs support. But
Yeah.
the majority of them, and then, yeah, you have the majority of things that we're diagnosing as cancer now that 20 years ago were not being diagnosed as cancer, and people were not dying from them.
Yeah.
So
And you have to watch where you live as well. People, since we live in Utah, like there's a lot of downwinders, is what they call them, when they were doing all the atomic explosion experiments,
mm,
and radiation clouds were just drifting over into different states. And a
mhm.
lot of that happened in Utah, and then you get severe forms of cancer. So you also have to pay very, very close attention to where are you buying a house? Where are you living? Because even like nuclear power plants, they it is not clean energy, number one, folks. They put off so much waste every single day of nuclear waste that we do not have enough room to store it. So just think about that for a second. And they're storing it underground. So where are you building your house? You
Mhm.
got to pay attention to those things when you're like out house shopping, and like for your kids, for your family, for your health, for everything. Definitely.
Well, and I think you can really, it's easy when I mean, we could talk for days on all the things, right?
Yeah, yeah, there's a
The
lot of
the
things.
you know cellular
Yeah,
radiation,
yeah.
and chemtrails,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
even just conventional fertilizers and pesticides. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're spraying Roundup in your yard, oh my gosh, stop. Um, but I think the thing to remember is one, we have far more control over these things than it seems in a way. You're like, oh, well, where am I going to go to the doctor? Where am I going to get my food? Where am I going to live? But um, we do have an element of control, personal power. But the other thing is that at some point, and now there are individuals, and there are groups around our country and around the world who are beginning to, and have been for a while, but stronger and stronger movements of not only speaking out, but really trying to take stands um, to change these things. And I think that's another really important thing,
Yeah.
as we cannot stay silent about
Yeah.
this stuff any longer.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. It just feels so overwhelming sometimes, like David and Goliath with
Yeah.
with these big systems. Um, but it
And
is
there's
so
more
important,
power in more people. Like
and
I've
it's
always,
growing, and it's
yeah,
growing. But you
I've
talk about power.
always literally like get the fuck pissed off. Get
Right?
pissed off. Yeah.
Why are we not outraged? Why?
Yeah.
Well, because we've been taught as women, you got to be docile, and then men, if you're angry, then you're violent. Like, no, there is a time and place for our anger, and
Yeah.
it is needed.
Yeah.
Healthy anger, protective anger is so needed right now.
Yeah.
Um, I was going to power to the people. So today is November 19th, and I know you're like, I don't know what this means, but
She's the astrologer of the podcast here, folks.
I
Yeah.
am not. I'm a reluctant astrologer. I was my whole life. I'm like, oh, astrology is just all and it was, I don't know, about 4 years ago when I'd have all these conversations with people, and then my sister would, I'd have a conversation one day, and then my sister would send me this podcast of some astrologer that, she was listening to. And I'm like, all right, I'll listen. She's like, no, you got to listen to this. You'd like it. I listen. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is all the things I've been talking about. And
Mhm.
so I've been starting to follow astrology because I feel it anyway. I can tell you what's going on with the stars simply because of what I'm picking up. And so I'm like, okay, there's definitely something to it. And I studied music therapy when I was in college for just a section. It's not what I majored in, but one of my classes was music therapy, and um, so studying, learning about how frequency affects the body,
Yeah.
and through
I
music,
have a
but
I
also
have that quote
that
that I
was
told you.
well, that was my ding with astrology, was like, wait a second, everything has frequency. So you mean
Yeah.
like that planet, that star, that moon out there also have a
Yeah.
specific frequency, and where they are in the sky affects us. So they're
Yeah.
definitely, it's one of
Yeah.
the oldest, astronomy is one of the oldest
Yeah.
sciences. And again, it's frequency, right? Yeah, frequency
So what is
medicine. So,
today? What is
okay, right.
happening
Oh,
today?
yeah. What is today? So today is Pluto moves into Aquarius. And now, for those of you who are like, like, and the chicken crossed the road, like, what does that mean? So Pluto moves into Aquarius. So for the last, Pluto is the planet that is known, the frequency of Pluto, the resonance of Pluto, and how Pluto affects us is one of power, collective power, individual power, but also like the way we hold power, the way we hold power over others. And it's a planet whose energy holds also where we need to transform our power into higher levels, meaning like for the highest good, for stepping into your true power for the highest good, as a collective, taking back our power for the highest good. So not just, I'm going to become a dictator and, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
brute strength power, but for the highest good, and the process of transformation. So transforming these things in our lives. What do we need? What needs to die? What
Mhm.
needs to be stripped back? Where do
Yeah.
we need to die to be transformed to step into that? So Pluto has been moving through the sign of Capricorn, and Capricorn energy is a lot about building and doing, and and structures. So like you think about like the epitome of it in a negative sense, in the shadow side of it, the epitome of patriarchal power structures is very Capricorn, can be. Um, and in the last 20 years, we've been moving through this. So we've been seeing all these things on Wall Street and with our political systems and with our economic systems where Pluto's been moving through this sign, like showing us like the underbelly of it, of like where it's really kind of gotten out of balance. So now Pluto's moving into the sign of Aquarius. Well, Aquarius is this energy of could be either utopia or dystopia, right? It can be very progressive, but the dawning of the age of Aquarius, it's
Yeah.
really this
The
movement
new
about
age of Aquarius starts in 2025. I do know
right.
that. Yeah.
So and we're moving into this time, and Pluto in Aquarius is about handing or moving the power to back to the people. So of the people, by the people, for the people. So you're going to be
Mm,
start seeing a lot more. We're already seeing this, but even more and more and more. It's like power from the roots up rather than from the top down. It's like
yeah.
power of the masses
Yeah.
along with really honoring
Hmm.
the individual as well. So, like, where do you as an individual stand sovereign within a collective group of people that are working together being sovereign? So, we've had, in the United States, especially, we've had like this, rugged individualism. And so now it's like coming back into like this balance of, yes, upholding the rights of the individual
Yeah.
within the what is, the collective. And so rather than having individual powers over, we're going to have this collective while still honoring the individual. So, so it's a big day. It's a big, kind of a big day. It's a big era that we're moving into.
No wonder I wanted to do two podcasts in one day.
Yeah, power
But
to the people. And we're talking
power
about
to
the people's
people.
medicine right now. We're talking about,
Yeah.
yeah, like how this went from the people's medicine to, a small group or one man, really, Rockefeller, one man controlling it, small group controlling it, and for their own very capitalistic monetary gain. And
Yeah.
now we're talking about handing this power of health back to the individual. Herbal medicine, holistic medicine is really one of personal empowerment, one of taking personal responsibility for your health. You
Yeah.
don't if you're going to an herbalist and they're just handing you a big list of herbs to take, just like a script.
Hmm.
Don't go to that herbalist.
Yeah.
That's still very Western allopathic based.
Yeah.
I when I work with clients, if I have a client that keeps coming back to me for the same thing and I'm like, okay, either one, we're not getting to the root of what's going on with you, but the majority of the time, I can tell when it's a person that's just like, I'm going to McDonald's and I'm sitting on my couch and I'm not eating healthy and but I just want you to give me the herb because it's natural. Give me the herb that's going to fix this. I'm like, well, the herb isn't going to fix it. But getting off the couch and grabbing maybe a nice grass-fed burger instead of McDonald's might.
Yeah.
So really it's taking responsibility for
Yeah.
your own health.
And I was gonna add one more thing to this whole like big pharma government situation because I worked at a children's hospital and there's a lot of advertisements going around now about vaccines and the flu vaccine was always kind of there or whatever, but after COVID, now all of a sudden big pharma is like, oh hey, we can get some more money off of making all these vaccines, like
Trillions.
trillions. Yeah. Like
Mhm.
RSV in babies. I worked on the infant unit in the children's hospital, and our floor for the infants, we would have to take over the floor below us as well because it would be filled from November clear through March with RSV cases. We were sucking buckets, I mean, literally buckets of snot out of these babies, and listening to their lungs, it sounded like popcorn in there. And now all of a sudden there's these commercials for vaccines for RSV. I'm like, where the fuck was that when like the whole unit of the hospital was like full of these babies dying in like horrible condition for RSV. You didn't give a crap about it then, but now you know you can make a bunch of money off vaccines. So we're going to make a vaccine for freaking everything now. And it's like,
Well, vaccines are about, that's a whole series of episodes that we could do
yeah.
on truly the safety and the efficacy of vaccines and what they do, as well as the history.
Oh,
Um,
I got the whole history of how AIDS actually
so
started, and it started with the polio vaccine. So we can do a whole episode on that, but we'll get to
yeah,
that on a
there's
different
there's
day.
there's episodes upon episodes
Yeah.
on the actual. You want to talk about the actual research
Yeah.
behind vaccines
Yeah.
and what they are and what they do to the body.
Yeah.
So
It
yeah,
just,
I'm not gonna even open my mouth with that
I
can of
know. It's like,
worms today.
well, different podcasts for a different day,
Mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm,
just my own personal medical journey, because I have pancreatitis, and because I'm such a strong universal being, like anybody else that watches anything else I talk about, like I do Akashic Records readings, I know my whole universal story, and there's different ailments that come with different universal beings and yada yada. But I have inflammatory responses. But I knew that something was wrong, and I like my whole intuition, everything in me, my body was just screaming, there's something going on with your pancreas. And for 7 years, I could not get a doctor be able to find something wrong with my pancreas. And then it just so happened out of luck that my one friend worked in the radiology department at the hospital, and she's like, you need to tell your doctor to order you a HIDA scan. And I had never heard of that before. But anyway, I was in this machine for 2 hours, and what they do is obviously put some radioactive crap in you so they can watch it flow through your system. But they also put stuff in that forces your gallbladder to contract and like work, and my gallbladder was not working at all. And when they put that second round in to make my gallbladder function, I was in so much pain. It was mind-boggling. And the guy was kept saying, "Are you sure you don't want me to stop the test?" I'm like, "No, because now something is finally showing what's wrong with me." And so then after that, I was for it was probably like 4 years, 5 years, I was on a regimen of promethazine, which is not anti-vomiting medicine. Any woman that's been pregnant is probably familiar with that. Pain medications from Dilaudid to Oxycontin to Tramadol. And this is before we had medical marijuana where we live. And all of it, for one, dried me out like a raisin. So then it gave me all kinds of other gastrointestinal problems. And I just don't have an addictive personality, and I don't like painkillers anyway. I don't like the way they make me feel. I just don't like it. So, I mean, this was years of taking these medicines, and I I just decided I'm not going to do this anymore, because
mm-hmm,
like I'll just keep having to take all of these medicines, and I don't want to do that. So I started to literally look at other things that I could do for my pancreas. And my doctor, he's actually a really good doctor, but still he's that's his job, is to write prescriptions. But um he got me some really good enzymes for my pancreas, and I found a mushroom tea that actually helps cleanse all of my organs out, and I take dandelion tea, and that's all I do now for my pancreas. And every once in a while, I'll get like a flare up where it hurts really bad. And I do have a medical marijuana card, and I just go get some pot and smoke a bowl, and then the pain's gone.
Well, cannabis is an excellent anti-inflammatory and,
Yeah,
works, has an affinity as well to the digestive system.
yeah.
So, yeah.
So I just made that choice of I am not going to be on these prescription meds like this for the rest of my life. I cannot
Mm-hmm.
stand this. And so you have to listen to your body and what your body is telling you that it needs.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you have to react to that. And once I got off of all of those meds and started doing these other things, I mean, if I get really stressed, my pancreas will act up and I'll break out in hives because I have inflammatory responses, but it's nothing like it used to be at all. So people just have to listen to their bodies too. It's not just listen to your doctor saying, "Oh, you got this and let me give you this medicine." And you have to listen to whatever you call it, your intuition, your gut instinct, whatever you call it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know this came up in our last episode, and it'll probably come up in every single episode that we talk about health or consciousness
Yeah.
or anything, but the body is designed to heal.
Yeah.
And all of these, what, so diagnoses are, so I know we weren't going to go here today, but it's really interesting. When you talk about the power of consciousness, diagnoses are, sometimes they can be relief because then you're like, oh, now I know what's going on.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't say
Yeah, that was a relief for me.
that's not necessarily the diagnosis, but it's the understanding of what's happening in the body.
Hmm.
And when then you can relax, then a lot of times, whatever the issue is, can clear up on its own. When we remain in that state of stress,
Hmm.
that's what perpetuates it. And so, more often, though, diagnoses are really something very akin to, we talk about herbalists being the quack doctors and, and the witches, but that diagnosis is 100% a spell.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of, but I have blah, 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 the doctor said. But honestly, what that is looking at the symptoms and saying, well, we're going to call these symptoms this. And so often, I was just talking to someone that, a while back, and they were saying, I have this, and this symptom. And I looked it up, and I think I have, this. And I said, well, that's interesting because I have all those same symptoms. And the conclusion that I came to about my health was, well, I'm just about in menopause. And this
Yeah.
person's like, oh, I have this really serious health thing. And I'm like, and I'm in menopause and we have the same symptoms.
Yeah.
And so often, it can be helpful at times, but ultimately, and again, in our Western system, the way that our understanding, the lens that doctors are taught in the Western system is very different than the way that doctors are taught in traditional Chinese medicine, in Ayurveda,
Yeah.
and in other modalities.
Yeah.
A modality that I'm recently learning about that I really um, I think there's a lot of credibility to. It's called German New Medicine, and um, it really looks at the mind body connection. I think I brought it again. I think I brought it up in our last episode of that the majority of our health issues come down to their imbalance in the body,
Hmm.
and the majority of the time, especially for us in the Western world, it's stress and different types of conflicts,
Yeah.
emotional, psychological conflicts, not
Yeah.
necessarily even physical conflicts, but
Yeah.
emotional and psychological conflicts. Like you said, when your stress levels go up, that pain in your pancreas flares. There's a specific, so in German New Medicine, oh gosh, I forget his first name, Dr. Hammer. Um, he was a German physician, and his
Uh,
son just
The Hammers in
tragically.
the U.S. are a very nasty, nasty family. But go
Oh
ahead.
well, the hammer in Germany, he's a great guy. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but
Oh,
his body of work still remains, and is such a he has done tremendous amount of research, being able to pinpoint a specific type of psychological conflict or emotional conflict, the very specific area of the brain that it affects, and then a corresponding organ and body system. And
yeah,
when you resolve the conflict, the the health issue resolves itself. And so
yeah,
talking about cancer different depending on where the cancer is in the body. Cancer is a very specific type of emotional psychological conflict or trauma, and when you resolve that conflict, the cancer resolved. The other thing about our health is that, you mentioned symptoms, and all our symptoms are is our body sending us signals and communications, the way our body communicates with us. If you're not more in touch with your body, some people are really good at tuning into their bodies and knowing things.
yeah.
And over the
Well,
years, I've
and
gotten better and
both of
better. But
us do energy healing, and so
right,
if I'm actually doing a Reiki session on somebody, like yes, you're concentrating on their chakras, but I'm literally scanning their entire body, and I can feel it down to a cellular level what is going
yep,
on with that person.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I picked that up too, and
yeah,
we both do
yeah,
Reiki and energy healing.
yeah,
But as a whole, we are really disconnected. Again, in the Western world, we have been taught to stay up here in our minds. And by minds, really not even our mind, capital M mind, but brain mind, stay in our brain mind,
yeah.
and taught that that's the focal point of our consciousness and
And
our,
it's not. Yeah,
and it's
it is
not. And
not.
we're really disconnected from our bodies. So when we have these symptoms come up, people, oh, I'm sick, I'm freaking out, I have this pain,
Hmm.
and not understanding that all of these symptoms are is the way that your body's communicating with you, and
Yeah.
also letting you know what is happening with it. When you get cold symptoms, right? Like, let's say you've got a stuffy nose and it's going into your throat, and now your throat is raw, or a
Hmm.
chest, and that is all that is your body detoxing. It is your body having this brilliant biological
Yeah.
adaptation either to
You
something that
don't
you've
feel the
been exposed
symptoms of a
to.
virus until your white blood cells are like, whoa, hey, we got an invader. And when the white blood cells start to attack that invader, that's when you start to feel like shit and you start to get the symptoms because your body's trying to get rid of it.
Well, and again, that whole notion of attack, or like that bacteria and viruses or are invaders attacking us, that's a very allopathic notion, and it's really incorrect. The majority of, not the majority, about half the cells in our body are non-human cells.
Yeah.
Half the cells in our body are bacteria and fungi
Oh, yeah, we
and
have,
and
yeah,
and
there's
viruses,
there's
and
good
we
bacteria and
are
bad
this
bacteria.
synergistic, what we call human is really, curious. Then what is human if half of me is not even quote unquote human cells? It's other organisms
Yeah.
that are living in this symbiotic
Hmm.
system that creates me, and this symbiotic system that is affecting my consciousness, it's affecting my thoughts, it's affecting
Yeah.
my emotions, it's affecting, so that's affecting my decisions and my behaviors. So
Yeah.
half of the cells in my body are affecting how I live, and I consider it me. Is it me, or is it these other entities, other
Yeah.
entities, these other beings?
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. So our whole notion of what it is to be human and what health is in the Western system is, um, well, it's really outdated and it's really incorrect.
Yeah.
So I
And
think we just went on like 16 tangents. I don't even know if we addressed the original point that we started
the
talking about.
but I was just gonna mention. Hey, both doggies want to be in my lap. Okay, we got growling puppies making space. All right. Um, welcome to my life, folks.
Yeah.
Um, so we were talking a little bit about like trauma and
Mhm.
mental health problems, things like that that come up in people. So we talked a little bit about cannabis, and I want to add on there shrooms or ayahuasca. Well, one, you need to know that you're with an actual practitioner of ayahuasca, not just
Mm.
go to some Joe Schmo that says they freaking make some ayahuasca. Like, don't do that because
Okay,
it
so we're
takes
going to
you,
delve into consciousness expanding
yeah.
plants.
But
Okay.
yeah, when you have trauma that you have not dealt with, those plants will bring it to the forefront. And that's why a lot of doctors will actually say that these things actually cause you anxiety and they're not
Mm.
helpful. But you get anxiety because whatever you have not dealt with comes right here to the forefront, and your body's like, ding, 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 ding. You've got to deal with this and clear it. And once you're in a peaceful state, these types of plant medicines do not have that effect on you anymore. And but like I said, ayahuasca, you need to make sure you're with a, you know, a practitioner, a shaman, medicine man person that knows what they're doing, that can walk you through it, because that can be one hell of a crazy journey on ayahuasca. I've never done it. I've just heard people talk about it, but for any of you guys that have ever just smoked some pot or taken some shrooms, I've done both of those. But I'm very much an active person, and whatever has happened in my life, like, I want to face it. I want to deal with it. I want to take care of that shit. Like, I don't let things fester in my subconscious. I clear them out. And also,
So talking about psychedelics, so speak just a bit to psychedelics in terms of plant medicine and plant spirit medicine. Like what do you think the use or the role of psychedelics? And I mean psychedelics sounds like oh, it's a fun party, ooh, psychedelic like tie-dye shirts, but we're talking about consciousness altering, well, eh, consciousness altering again is also a misnomer
it's
because
not
there are a lot
altering,
of
it's
things that
more
we use coffee and
awakening.
alcohol and sugar and
Yeah,
your antidepressant and your ADD medication and your TV, like everything is consciousness altering, but
yeah,
consciousness expanding, I think
yeah.
that's a better consciousness expanding plant medicines.
Hmm.
Talk about that for a minute because
Yeah,
you delve a lot with other states of consciousness. I do too as a
yeah,
hypnotherapist, and I do shamanic work. So these
yeah.
are altered states of
So
consciousness that we're in.
I use hape, which is very Native American. It's very sacred. It will actually ground you and calm you. So especially if you're having like a panic attack or something like that. But there's different hape for different uses and different reasons.
And
Different,
hape is for the people in the back. What is hape?
yeah. It's a form of tobacco, but you snuff it up your nose. You do the same
Okay,
with rape. Hape and rape are both of native origins.
and
And
they're powderized and they're mixed with other herbs.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
it depends on what kind of journey you want to go on and what you're trying to clear out. So some of them are a lot stronger than other ones. Um, but the one good thing about hape or rape is it only lasts for like 10 minutes. So yeah, that's that. Cannabis, I don't smoke it all the time like some people do on a regular basis, but it expands my consciousness, and I literally just go blasting out into the universe. I astral project and go on just this like joyride. Um, Shrooms, I literally, because I can already just in normal life without any kind of drugs whatsoever. I could go outside. I hear the trees singing to me. I can hear the river talking to me. I can hear nature speaking to me. I can hear all of those things. I can call any animal to me. I'm very connected to nature. So when I do shrooms, it's just magnified for me. Like ayahuasca, I have not done because that just scares the shit out of me because I see and too many things already, and I'm like, but and as far as like hallucinogenics, I did drop acid twice in college, but like I said, I'm not somebody that like holds on to my pain even though I'm a really strong empath, like I want to clear that shit. Like I don't want to hold on to it. So even both times that I dropped acid in college, I was just out in nature, just like la da da da, da, like everything was just
Well,
like this.
and
Yeah.
acid LSD is the synthetic form of the hallucinogenic property that's found in ayahuasca, correct?
No, LSD was created in a lab. So
Right, but
yeah,
it's the synthetic version of, oh no, it's DMT that's in
DMT. There we go.
ayahuasca.
That yeah.
Um,
So I
but
don't know the ties to those two things.
LSD is just it's a lab made synthetic
Yeah.
hallucinogenic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I didn't go through a bad experience with any of that, but um just even having people on like my massage table and having them either in a quantum meditation session or a Reiki session, I could literally peel their brains apart like one of those blooming freaking onion things at the restaurant, you know? Like I could see everything that's ever happened to that person. And then I start to scan their body and I could see everything that's going on in their body. And like I've had clients that I've even told you're going to have a heart attack. And like at least the one person that I remember very strongly and telling that to actually went and had, EKG on his heart and like got the measurements and the readings on his heart and the test and the doctors are like, "Whoa, hey, dude." And so like that was very true. But if you do these kind of hallucinogenic things, and even cannabis, it's not hallucinogenic, like you're not hallucinating something that's not there like you would with LSD, but it's definitely expanding your mind. So if you've got pent up trauma and things that you have not dealt with, you're not going to have a very good time with these kinds of things. So I
Mm-hmm.
always, and even just in quantum meditation, that gets very, very deep for people. So I am always, because I'm such a strong empath, I'm reading them the whole time. And if they start to get too stressed, I bring them out of it. And I have normally I have apple cider if I have somebody coming for quantum meditation because it's of the earth. But if they don't like apples, then I just, give them some like spring water or something like that. But to like bring them back to earth and like calm down because it gets so deep and like clearing, going into that subconscious where everybody stores all of that shit that they don't want to face. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you just have to make sure that you're safe when you do things like that.
Well, and you bring up an important note as well of, oh, when I dropped acid in college,
I
when
did.
I was at this party, and how these plants, um, I would say maybe open our minds. They also open our bodies up, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
why you're feeling the trauma, why you're experience the trauma when you are working with these medications. And
yeah,
there's certainly so much use of, I'm going to go trip on shrooms. We're going to go, get high and smoke pot this weekend. when we are using these plants are known as plant spirit medicines. They are historically, traditionally used in ceremonies.
Yes.
So,
They're
like you said,
sacred.
they are sacred
Yes.
plants. They are used, even tobacco. They're
Yes.
used in ceremonies with people who have had experience and been trained in working with these energies and helping people process through these things historically. However, when we start using them just to relax on a Friday night or after work, or even, you know, cannabis is a great pain reliever. So I know there's a lot of people right now using cannabis and CBD for chronic pain or even for acute pain, which is wonderful. I would much rather see people using utilizing the benefits of something like cannabis than an opioid or a
Yeah.
steroid, or even ibuprofen and Tylenol are very damaging.
Yeah.
So cannabis is 100% safe. It's non-addictive. However, it is really important to understand that, especially with the more potent medicines, that historically these are held as sacred, and to not abuse them. They are When we
Yeah.
abuse them, that's especially when we start experiencing the either um, you know ill side effects, I would even say, of
Yeah.
a bad trip potentially,
Yeah.
or anxiety,
Yeah.
or even when you're using it, when you're trying to use cannabis like you use your um, excuse me, your antidepressant, or you're using cannabis like you use your Tylenol or pain med. This is not how that medication was intended to work.
Yeah.
It's not intended to be used every day or
No.
even chronically or long term. And the interesting thing about cannabis in particular is cannabis is a it's estrogenic, meaning that it can alter your estrogen levels in the body. And so women it could affect women, but especially, like, it lowers testosterone levels, and it can have a negative impact on men and men's hormonal health.
Yeah.
And so you see all these young men chronically using cannabis. That is not how it was. That's not how nature designed it, and it is actually ultimately long-term detrimental. And in a lot of indigenous cultures, cannabis was considered, it's a woman's herb. Men were not, men did not use it. They were sometimes not even allowed to use it. And it was not consumed. It was smoked. It was not, it was, used for childbirth pain. It might have been used maybe when women were menstruating to help get into those expanded states of consciousness.
Yeah.
Um, and used in ceremony for those expanded states of consciousness, not as a daily or even a so much of a recreational use. And same
Yeah.
thing with psilocybin. Psilocybin can be very powerful for deep psychological, emotional work. It loosens up all the neural connections in your brain so that your brain can
Yeah.
make new connections and new neural pathways, that you get in what's called like your default mode, which is kind of, just this, you have your neurons that have just created these highways basically
Yeah.
that affect your behavior and your thought patterns. And psilocybin loosens those up so you can make new pathways. um, but again, if you're abusing that or using it just recreationally,
Mhm.
um, just be respectful and honor it. It's a very
Yeah. Yeah.
powerful medicine. On a side note to that, though, I work with a technique of hypnotherapy. My One of my teachers, Melissa Tears, she developed this. She calls it hypnopsychedelics. So it's a combination of breath work and hypnosis that has a very similar effect to loosening those neural pathways and helping to rewire and reroute things in the brain
Yeah.
and in the body without, the, 5 hour journey to
And
who knows where.
just
So,
and besides even plant medicine, because earlier today I did a podcast about Nikola Tesla, and so I was found this quote. This is actually Albert Einstein that said this, but I'm going to read this so that I don't get it wrong because it's actual quote. But he said, "Future medicine will be the medicine of frequencies." Now, there's frequencies that I hear and connect with all throughout the universe, frequencies that I hear and connect with nature, with trees, with the fishes, with all the animals, and like sound bowl healing and
mhm,
all of these things can help you just as much as plant medicine.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So that could be like a whole nother podcast too, but yeah, those
Or
are
20
very
again, like that's a
yeah.
whole series. Girl, we got to start like a whole educational series here.
I
So,
know. We're gonna get into so many topics here, but
yeah.
like
Well,
the
that's
main
important to with the frequencies. Plants are, so one of the main differences, again, when we're looking at, lab made synthetic drugs, um, as a, as compared to an herbal remedy, or even a cup of herbal tea,
Mhm.
a tincture, all the different forms that herbs are used. Plants are sentient beings. Plants are
Yeah,
living sentient beings. You're taking in sunlight and they're alchemizing it. So when you're taking in plant medicines, or, fruits and vegetables or meat, right, you are consuming this alchemized, condensed form of the power of the sun. But
yeah,
plants in general as well, they are sentient living beings. They are constantly um, adapting and responding to the environment that they're in.
yeah,
And so all of the different constituents that are in that plant have responded to all the weather, the stressors, the insects, everything that's going on in that plant's environment. When you
yeah,
take that in, you are benefiting from it, and your body interfaces with that naturally. Our bodies know exactly how to interface with plants because we are nature, they
yeah.
are nature. Our
And
bodies do not know how to interface with synthetics. And the same thing goes with vitamins. The majority of vitamins on the market are synthetic. Our bodies really don't know what to do with that. So, on that note, there's a big push too for like these, heroic or exotic herbs. Oh, I need this from the Amazon or that from, the Himalayas. The reality is that unless you're in that environment, you probably don't need that. The best medicine that you need is right outside your door.
yeah,
And if you live in a apartment building and you're just surrounded by concrete, maybe your region, so if you can't if you don't have access to herbs in your yard, which I know most people are like, oh, what are you talking about herbs? Well, if you have dandelions and plantain, if you got weeds growing in your
yeah.
yard, you have
And
access to herbal medicine.
you can grow your own herbs just right there in your kitchen. Like
Yeah.
they don't
Well,
take up that much space.
yeah. Yeah. So those are plants that are adapted to your environment, which is
Mhm.
exactly what your body needs, is the environment that you live in.
Yeah,
So the other way that our bodies interface with herbs versus synthetic drugs is um, every single drug on the market, with the exception of just a very like one or maybe less than five, like
yeah,
literally, it's this. I'm not making these numbers up. Every single drug on the market cuts off our connection to and the signal in our body. That's why you feel like it works, is because
yeah,
your body's sending a signal, it's sending a message. The drug cuts off the signal, so you no longer experience the symptom.
yeah.
However, it has done nothing
To
to stop
yeah,
why you're having this signal in the first place.
yeah.
So
The
drugs
only
actually,
drug out there that well, which my body can't handle anymore because they pumped my literally in my ass all the time when I was little because I had earaches and
Mm,
tonsil problems when I was little, so they pumped me full of penicillin all the time. But penicillin was an actual breakthrough and it does come from mold. So it is a natural drug and it did revolutionize things. It did save people from a lot of different types of infections. So that's one medicine that I can't take, but
yeah.
that
Well,
doctors
yeah, that is,
prescribe that
yep.
is
That is
very revolutionary.
that is one of that's one of
Yeah,
that
is
handful.
one of those. Yeah,
Antibiotics, but antibiotics as a whole, no, that there
yeah,
are a lot of newer class antibiotics
yeah.
that are
Not so good.
insanely detrimental. And
Yeah,
again, we could talk for hours on the whole class of I think they're called like floxy, and that's you're talking about experiences. Well, I'm not even getting that. I'm going to finish what
yeah,
I was saying. The way that our bodies interface with herbs actually work with our bodies to help get to the root and create balance. And herbs, going back to being sentient beings, one of my favorite examples is the herb yarrow. So if you are um, so you're sick, you're starting to fever. If your body needs to fever to kill off an excess of pathogens or
yeah,
to kill off, whatever it is that your body has created the fever for, usually it is to kill off pathogens that are out of balance. Um, Yarrow will either, if you need to fever, if you need more of that, your internal body heat needs to rise, Yarrow will help you do that. If your body heat is too high and your fever is too high, yarrow will help bring it down.
yeah,
Yarrow also works with the blood, and again, like yarrow is an excellent herb. If you get a cut, out hiking and you get a cut, slap some, take some yarrow leaves or flowers, chew them up and slap those on there. They will help to stop the bleeding. However, internally, if your blood is too thick and it needs to move better, yarrow will help to thin it out and help it move. If it's too thin and you're prone to bleeding, yarrow will help it, those platelets. So it's the
yeah,
intelligence in there. It's not like it just what does one thing. Another important thing to note on herbal medicine, so many people, well, I tried this and it didn't work. Well,
yeah,
again, like we're kind of the mindset of symptom herb, and herbs don't work that way. Herbs really are designed to work with the whole person. So like let's say you and I have a head cold, right? You and I, yeah, we're congested, we're blowing our nose, we're coughing up phlegm, and we got a fever. What your body might need for your constitution is could be different than what my body needs. If I'm
yeah,
running cold and dry, I need herbs that are going to warm up and be moisturizing. If you're running like hot and you have an excess of moisture, you need herbs that are going to cool you off and dry you. So herbs are not a one size
no,
fits
not a
all
one fit.
because
No,
people are not a one size
yeah,
fits all. So
yeah.
yeah,
So
but
the main lesson from this whole podcast is listen to your body, folks.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
you've got to pay attention to what your body is saying. Like even like just as a just random example, food. If you go out
Mhm.
tonight and buy a big old bucket of freaking KFC, you're gonna feel like shit tomorrow. And that's like your body's telling you, I don't like that. So you have to
Yeah.
pay attention to what your body's saying to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It starts there. And again, getting back into connection, again, where, pharmaceutical drugs cut off that connection to our own
Yeah.
bodies, cut off that signal. Herbs, herbal medicine brings us back into connection to our physical body, to our emotional body, to our energetic or psychological or spiritual body. Herbs help to plants.
Yeah.
help to connect us back to ourselves, back to the earth, and back to life. And like you mentioned earlier today, really no amount of drugs obviously is going to get you well, but even no amount of herbal supplements or herbal medicines is really what you need for health. It really
Yeah.
comes down to personal responsibility for your
Mhm.
health.
Yep.
Truly, all you need is go outside, get sunlight, get fresh air, get exercise, hug, give like good long 20-second,
Yeah.
heart connecting hugs, affection, emotional intimacy,
Yeah.
laughter,
You
gratitude. Go hug a
you
tree, go put your,
definitely
that's it. It's
I
all
hug lots of
free.
trees. You get
Yeah.
a lot healthier, like the less anger and the less stress that you
Mhm.
carry with you,
Yeah.
for sure.
Gratitude and connection and laughter are probably the most powerful
Yeah.
medicines. Yeah.
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 So today we are giving health power back to the people's medicine,
Yeah.
power to the people.
Power to the people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we've probably said some things that people find controversial in here, and that's okay. Put your comments in here. Like, I forgot on our last podcast to put our email in the description, but I will remember this time, you guys. I will remember that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah. So just always listen to your body, and
Mhm.
you don't have to keep taking all of these drugs that the doctor gives you all the time.
Yeah.
You just got to listen to your body. So,
And just start with a small thing. Do I want this or this to eat today? Start small. Do I need a break?
yeah.
My body's telling me I need to go to the bathroom. That's like one of the simplest.
Yeah.
Like listen to that. Don't sit there and then hold it.
Yeah.
And as your knowledge base grows, your confidence in trusting yourself. I fully stepped out of the allopathic system. I mean, 100% fully, probably 5 years ago, but it's been probably a good 10 to 15 years that I really, oh, when was the last time I went to the doctor? It, I just trust my body, but I have learned over time to trust my body, to trust its messages, and to fully trust in the ability of nature and my body to
Yeah.
heal. And so it's a process. Some people, some people are cold turkey kind of all at once people. For me, it's been a slow process, and the slow process really of just seeing through again, all the holes in that system, that medical
Yeah.
system, realizing that this is a sick care system, but
Yeah.
that you're not left high and dry. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do then? It's learning to trust the innate wisdom of your body and the innate wisdom of nature that she's got you. She's got you covered.
Yeah.
Both you
Yeah.
and nature. And um, and there are a lot of just amazing practitioners out there. And one
Yeah.
of them, you're, good on the energetic level. So,
And there's
um,
even practitioners, and I don't know what these machines are called. Maybe it's a Zytoscan. I don't know. But they put it on your fingers and on your feet, and it literally tells what your body is lacking. So there's centers like that you can go to for things like that. You can go on like an Ayurvedic cleanse. There's places where they have things that you could soak your feet in that pull all the toxins from your body. So there's all kinds of things that you guys can look into that have nothing to do with just going to your doctor and getting a prescription for something.
oh,
So,
there's so,
so
so
many.
many good resources.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's about all I had to say today. My
That's
little
all I have to say.
history rant there. Yeah.
Well, I got a lot more to say. Go hug a tree. Go hug a tree. Go
Hug a
hug
tree,
a tree.
folks.
Yeah.
And as always, please make sure and subscribe to our page because we will be doing these podcasts on a variety of different topics. And that way, you know when they come out. And it helps us because we just started this podcast, but everybody has to start somewhere. So please like and subscribe and tell your friends. And I'll make sure and put the email address in the description. So if anybody wants to book a session with any one of us or just even has questions about anything, just
Mhm.
write us. We will respond. So that's about it for today. You have anything else,
Okay.
Jen?
Oh, well, I mean, do we do this disclosure? We are not doctors. These are our
Uh,
personal opinions. Don't,
yeah,
take what we say as a diagnosis or prescription or blah,
yeah,
blah,
yeah.
blah.
We are not doctors. Yeah,
And be kind in the comments. That's be kind.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but power to the people. So I'm like,
Take that
power to
power
the
back,
people.
folks.
That's right.
Okay,
Yep.
we will see you guys next time.
Okay.
Thanks for
See
stopping
ya out
by.
there.